I was a simple cupbearer in the court of the mighty King Artaxerxes of Persia. My role was to serve wine to the king, ensuring his safety against any threat. It was a position of great trust and responsibility, but my heart was always connected to my homeland, Jerusalem. One day, my brother Hanani and some men from Judah arrived in the city of Susa, where I lived. With an anxious heart, I asked them about the state of the Jews who had returned from exile and about Jerusalem. I hoped to hear good news, perhaps reports of rebuilding and hope. But what I heard deeply shook me. The survivors of the captivity who are in the province are experiencing great suffering and humiliation, they said. The walls of Jerusalem are in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Hearing these words felt like the world was collapsing around me. Images of my beloved Jerusalem devastated, with its walls torn down and gates burned, flooded my mind. I thought of the people, my people, living in misery and shame, exposed to enemies without any protection. I couldn't hold back my tears. I sat down and wept bitterly for days. Sorrow took over my being, and food lost its taste. I decided to fast and seek God's face fervently. In my prayers, I cried out to the God of heaven, acknowledging his greatness and faithfulness to those who love him and obey his commandments. Lord, I prayed, incline your ears and open your eyes to the prayer of your servant, who is praying before you day and night for your people Israel. I confess the sins that we, the Israelites, have committed against you. We have acted corruptly and have not obeyed your commandments. As I poured out my heart, I remembered the promises God had made to Moses, that if the people turned to him, even if scattered to the ends of the earth, he would gather them and bring them back to the place he chose to dwell his name. Each passing day, my conviction grew stronger. I felt that God was placing a burden on my heart, a call to do something about the situation. But I was just a cupbearer. How could I make any impact? Still, I decided that if God was with me, I should act. I then asked God to grant me favor before King Artaxerxes. I knew that approaching the king about this matter was risky, but my compassion for the people and the city of Jerusalem outweighed any fear I might feel. During this period, even while fulfilling my duties at court, my sorrow was evident. The king noticed my downcast expression and asked, "Why is your face sad if you are not ill? This can only be sorrow of the heart." At that moment, I felt a chill down my spine. It was dangerous to show sorrow in the presence of the king, but I recognized that this was the opportunity God was giving me. With respect and fear, I replied, "Long live the king forever." How could my face not be sad when the city where my parents' graves are located is in ruins, and its gates have been consumed by fire? The king then asked me, "What would you like to request?" I made a brief prayer to God and said, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant can count on your kindness, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city where my parents' graves are, so that I may rebuild it." To my surprise and joy, the king not only granted my request but also gave me authorization letters for the governors of the regions I would pass through and orders for the royal forest official to provide wood for the citadel gates, the temple, the city walls, and the house I would occupy. With a grateful heart, I recognized that God's good hand was upon me. My sorrow had transformed into purpose. The journey would be long and challenging, but I was determined to fulfill the call God had placed on my heart. Thus began my mission to return to Jerusalem and lead the rebuilding of the walls, restoring not only the physical walls but also the hope and dignity of my people. After days of fasting, praying, and weeping for Jerusalem, I knew I needed to act. But how could a simple cupbearer help rebuild the walls of a distant city? My heart was heavy, but a spark of courage began to burn within me. I decided that with God's help, I would face any challenge. One day, while serving wine to King Artaxerxes, he noticed my sorrow. It was rare for me to show my emotions in the royal presence, as it could be interpreted as disrespect or even a threat. But at that moment, I couldn't hide. The king looked at me curiously and asked, "Why is your face sad if you are not ill? This can only be sorrow of the heart." I felt my heart race. I knew this was a divine opportunity, but also a dangerous moment. I took a deep breath and with respect replied, "Long live the king forever." How could my face not be sad when the city where my parents' graves are located is in ruins, and its gates have been consumed by fire? The king remained silent for a moment, pondering my words. Then he asked, "What would you like to request?" Before responding, I made a brief prayer in my heart, asking God for wisdom. Then I said to the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant can count on your kindness, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city where my parents' graves are, so that I may rebuild it." The king, alongside the queen who was also present, considered my request. I could feel the tension in the air. My life could be at risk, but I felt God's hand supporting me. Finally, the king asked, "How long will the journey take? When will you return?" I specified a time frame, showing my commitment to return. The king then agreed to my request. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest with joy and gratitude. But I realized this was the chance to ensure the mission's success. Boldly, I continued, "If it pleases the king, please provide letters to the governors beyond the Euphrates, so they will allow me passage to Judah. Also, a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forests, so he can provide wood for the citadel gates, the temple wall, the city wall, and the house I will live in." The king not only agreed to everything, but also designated army officers and horsemen to accompany me on the journey. I was amazed by such generosity. It was clear that God's good hand was upon me, opening doors and touching the king's heart in my favor. With the letters in hand and the necessary resources secured, I began preparing for departure. Every detail was carefully planned. I knew the journey would be long and full of challenges, but the king's provision gave me confidence. As we bid farewell, King Artaxerxes said to me, "Nehemiah, I trust you with this mission. Go, and may the gods be with you." Although he did not know the God of Israel, I felt this was a sincere blessing. Leaving the palace, I looked back one last time. My comfortable life as a cupbearer was behind me. Ahead lay an uncertain journey, but filled with purpose. I was no longer just a servant of the king. I now carried on my shoulders the hope of a people and the mission to restore Jerusalem's walls. As we traveled, crossing rivers and mountains, I reflected on everything that had happened. How God had turned my sorrow into action and granted me favor before the most powerful king in the land. Every step brought me closer to Jerusalem and strengthened my determination. Passing through the provinces, I delivered the king's letters to the local governors. Some looked at me with suspicion, others with curiosity. But no one could oppose the royal orders. The escort of soldiers accompanying me also commanded respect. Deep down, I knew the real challenges were yet to come. Rebuilding the walls would not be an easy task. There would be opposition, difficulties, and perhaps even dangers. But I trusted that, just as God had opened doors before the king, he would also give me wisdom and strength to lead the people in this great work. Finally, after a long journey, the silhouettes of Jerusalem's ancient walls appeared on the horizon. My heart filled with emotion and anxiety. What would I find upon arrival? How would the people react? Would I be able to fulfill such a grand mission? But one thing was certain: God had been with me from the start, and I would continue to trust him with every step of this journey. After weeks of traveling under the protection of the king's escort, I finally saw the ancient walls of Jerusalem on the horizon. My heart pounded in my chest, mixing feelings of hope and apprehension. The city that once symbolized faith and power was now surrounded by rubble and silence, reflecting the sorrow echoed in every fallen stone. Upon landing on Jerusalem's coast, I was greeted by a group of Jewish exiles who had returned from captivity in Babylon. Their faces clearly showed signs of weariness and discouragement. Some cried silently, others muttered words of despair. The sight touched me deeply. I knew I had an important mission to fulfill. Before presenting myself to any leader or speaking to the people, I felt the need to understand the true extent of the destruction. This knowledge would be essential to devise an effective rebuilding plan. So, I decided to conduct a nighttime and silent inspection of the walls. In the darkness of the night, I gathered with some loyal servants who had accompanied my journey. Together, we walked through the deserted streets of Jerusalem, illuminated only by the faint light of the stars and the distant glow of the guards' torches. Each step was meticulously calculated to avoid any unwanted attention. We reached the area where the walls were supposed to stand, but instead, we found only ruins and debris. Stones scattered across the ground testified to recent devastation. I sat among the rubble, closely observing every detail. The foundations were broken, and significant parts of the walls had been torn down or burned by fire. The gates, once guardians of the city, were now dusty and vulnerable. The silent assessment allowed me to understand the magnitude of the task ahead. It was not just a matter of rebuilding physical structures, but also restoring the dignity and hope of a people who had suffered so much. I realized that to lead this rebuilding, I needed to inspire trust and unity among the inhabitants. I rose from that nighttime inspection with a new sense of purpose. The stars shone brightly in the sky, as if witnessing the beginning of a new journey. I knew that rebuilding the walls would require meticulous planning, willpower, and above all, leadership based on faith. The next morning, I met with the community leaders. Many were skeptical and discouraged, but I could see a spark of hope in some eyes. I shared my vision for the rebuilding, emphasizing the importance of restoring the walls not only for physical security, but also to revitalize the people's spirit. I developed a detailed strategic plan, dividing the work into specific sections and assigning clear responsibilities to different groups of workers. The need for organization was vital to ensure that each task was executed efficiently and accurately. I also emphasized the importance of prayer and trust in God to guide us through this process. With the plan in hand, I began mobilizing the people. The response was surprisingly positive. Men, women, and even children joined with renewed determination. I felt the collective energy of a people who, despite adversities, were willing to rebuild their heritage and faith. However, I also realized that we could not ignore the external threats that might try to sabotage our efforts. This understanding led me to incorporate security measures into the rebuilding plan, ensuring that work could continue even in the face of potential resistance. As the sun rose over Jerusalem, casting its light on the broken walls and renewed hearts, I felt profound gratitude. God had answered my call and granted me the opportunity to lead this restoration work. I knew the challenges would be many, but I was confident that with faith and determination, we could rebuild Jerusalem's walls and restore the hope of a people. Thus, the arrival in Jerusalem and the secret assessment of the walls marked the beginning of a transformative journey. Each stone placed, each wall raised, not only reinforced the city physically but also symbolized the resilience and unwavering faith of the people of Israel. And I, Nehemiah, was ready to lead this work with all my heart, fully trusting in God's guidance and provision. After my arrival in Jerusalem and the silent assessment of the destroyed walls, I knew the next crucial step was to inspire the people to unite around this monumental mission. The city was filled with discouraged people, bearing the weight of loss and humiliation. My heart burned with passion and determination, driven by faith in God and the support I had received from King Artaxerxes. That morning, the sun was still rising when I gathered all the leaders and inhabitants near the ruins of the walls. The fresh breeze carried the scent of wet earth and residual smoke from recent destructions. People looked at me with curiosity and a mix of hope and skepticism. I knew the words I chose would be decisive for the success of our endeavor. With a firm gaze and confident voice, I began to share the vision of restoring Jerusalem. My brothers and sisters, I started, the city that was once a beacon of faith and power lies in ruins before us. But we are not here merely to rebuild stones. We are here to restore our identity, our security, and our faith in God. Slowly, I let my words resonate in the tense silence. God has brought us here, and He is with us every step of this journey. King Artaxerxes has granted us resources and support for this mission, but we need each one of you to achieve what seems impossible. I could see some faces beginning to light up with a spark of hope. Look around you, I continued, pointing to the ruins. Every stone we place is a testament to our faith and determination. We are not just rebuilding walls. We are rebuilding our community and restoring the honor of our people. To illustrate the importance of our mission, I shared stories from past times when Jerusalem was strong and prosperous, protected by its majestic walls. Do you remember the victories we celebrated within these walls? The prayers that lifted our hearts and the celebrations that filled our streets? We can bring all that back, but we need to work together. I noticed that many were still hesitant, scared by the magnitude of the task and the possible external threats. It was then that I decided to speak more boldly about God's provision and the King's support. God has given us the strength to overcome sadness and insecurity. He has granted us the courage to face any challenge. And King Artaxerxes, even though he does not know our God, recognized the importance of our mission and generously supported us. I shared in detail the letters and resources the king had provided, showing that we had the necessary infrastructure to begin rebuilding. We have wood from the royal forests to strengthen our walls, and the governor's letters will ensure our safe passage through all regions. We are not alone in this journey. We have the protection and support of powerful leaders who believe in our cause. With each word, I felt the collective energy growing. Men, women, and even children began to rise, motivated by the shared vision and the certainty that we could turn desolation into renewal. Let us divide the tasks in an organized manner, I proposed. Each group will have a specific section to rebuild. This way, we can advance efficiently and coordinately. The determination in each person's eyes was contagious. I saw volunteers offering to lead teams, others ready to provide materials and resources, and some simply offering their strength and hard work. The unity of the people was palpable, and the sense of purpose filled the air. However, I knew we could not ignore the possible resistances and external threats. We need to be prepared for any obstacles that may arise, I added, but together with faith and determination, we can overcome any challenge. To reinforce this preparation, I organized watch groups and strategic defenses along the rebuilding areas. We will protect our work and ensure that nothing stops us from completing this divine mission, I declared, emphasizing the need for security without letting fear dominate our hearts. As the days passed, the transformation was visible. The first stones were placed, followed by more and more, gradually forming the structure of the restored walls. The sense of progress boosted the people's morale, and the confidence in God and our leadership strengthened each day. During this period, the nights were filled with prayers and small celebrations, where we gathered to thank God for each advancement and to renew our commitment to the mission. Faith became the invisible foundation upon which we were rebuilding the physical walls. The unity and determination of the people were essential to facing the emerging challenges. There were moments of fatigue and discouragement, but we always found strength in each other and in our shared faith. Rebuilding Jerusalem's walls became a symbol of our resilience and our ability to rise in the face of adversity. And so, with each stone placed and each wall raised, we were not just rebuilding Jerusalem, but also renewing our hope and reaffirming our commitment to God and to one another. The vision I shared with the people was becoming a reality, and together, we were restoring the greatness of our city and our people. This phase of our journey showed that with faith, inspiring leadership, and unity, we can transform desolation into renewal and sorrow into joy. And I, Nehemiah, was honored to lead this restoration work, fully trusting in God's guidance and provision. As the walls of Jerusalem began to rise, a new challenge emerged from the shadows: fierce opposition from enemies determined to thwart our mission. Two of our main adversaries were Sanballat, the servant of Tobiah, and Tobiah the Ammonite, along with Gesem, the human who assisted them. These men saw the rebuilding of the walls as a direct threat to their own interests and power in the region. They threatened our security and tried to sabotage our efforts in various ways. From the start, Sanballat and Tobiah adopted tactics of intimidation and sabotage. They sent messengers to provoke us, trying to sow fear and doubt among the people. "Why are you working so hard and not resting?" they would say. "Don't you realize that you are destroying the work of the gods you worship?" These words aimed to destabilize our confidence and incite discouragement. In addition to verbal provocations, Sanballat and Tobiah attempted to undermine our progress physically. They spread rumors of conspiracy, trying to incite internal rebellions and attract the population to their cause. In a moment of desperation, they even threatened our workers, saying they would be attacked if they continued the rebuilding. Tension increased each day, and the need to respond to this opposition became ever more urgent. Facing these threats, many began to feel overwhelmed and insecure. Fear and anxiety started to infiltrate our hearts, threatening to divert our focus from the divine mission. However, I knew we could not succumb to despair. Instead, it was time to strengthen our faith and determination. On a quiet night, I gathered with the community leaders to discuss how to face this growing opposition. We decided that we could not allow fear to dominate our efforts. It was then that we turned to God in prayer, seeking guidance and strength. "Lord, you have placed us on this mission. We cannot accomplish it without your help. Give us courage to face our enemies and wisdom to protect our work." Inspired by prayer and collective faith, I made a crucial decision. I organized the people to work with readiness and vigilance. We divided the rebuilding tasks into shifts, ensuring that there were always people working and others on guard, ready to defend the city if necessary. Each worker carried not only tools and materials, but also the responsibility of protecting what we were rebuilding. We established watchposts along the newly constructed walls, arming ourselves with swords, spears, and shields provided by the resources King Artaxerxes had granted us. Each group of workers had its own small defense detachment, prepared to respond quickly to any threat. This combination of faith and practical readiness proved essential in maintaining our determination and security. But the opposition did not cease. Sanballat, Tobiah, and Gesem intensified their efforts to demotivate and delay the rebuilding. They sent more messengers, spreading lies and trying to sow discord among the people. They attempted to divide us, exploiting any sign of weakness or hesitation. It was a test of our unity and faith. Amidst this climate of tension, I decided that it was necessary to act more decisively. We organized prayer groups during the day and night, seeking God's presence in every aspect of our journey. Lord, you are our strength and our defense. Protect us from our enemies and guide us in rebuilding the city that is your heritage. These collective prayers strengthened our spirit and renewed our confidence in God. With each verbal attack and physical threat, we responded with unwavering faith and coordinated action. The constant presence of prayer and vigilance created an environment where fear had no place, and the people's determination grew each day. One of the most effective strategies was involving the entire community in the city's defense. Men, women, and even children took on their roles with courage and dedication. Some helped in the rebuilding, while others guarded the walls, ready to react to any sign of danger. This collective participation not only strengthened our defenses, but also reinforced the sense of belonging and shared responsibility. Even in the face of adversity, the unity and determination of the people remained firm. Each stone placed, each wall raised, was a testament to our faith and resilience. The combination of fervent prayer and practical preparation became the foundation upon which we were rebuilding Jerusalem. We felt God's presence guiding every step, sustaining us in moments of doubt, and strengthening us in times of challenge. Over time, the opposition began to weaken. The resilience of the people and the effectiveness of our defenses showed that we would not be easily defeated. Sanballat, Tobiah, and Gesem realized that their tactics of sabotage and intimidation were not working. The determination of the people of Jerusalem, fueled by faith and inspiring leadership, proved to be unshakable. Finally, after weeks of continuous confrontation, the opposition began to retreat. The city was in the process of rebuilding, and the walls were becoming stronger, reflecting not only physical strength but also the spiritual strength of the people. The victory was not just over external enemies, but also over internal doubts that threatened our mission. The experience of facing opposition and resistance further strengthened our faith and unity. We learned that with God by our side, no human force could stop us. The combination of prayer, readiness, and determined leadership was key to overcoming challenges and advancing our mission to restore Jerusalem. And so, with each obstacle overcome and each victory achieved, we moved closer to completing the rebuilding of the walls. The resistance faced only served to reinforce our determination and our trust in divine provision and protection. I, Nehemiah, was more convinced than ever that we were on the right path, guided by God's hand and united by the unwavering faith of our people. The struggle against opposition was a testament to our resilience and faith. It showed that even in the face of the severest adversities, we can find strength in God and our community to overcome any challenge. And thus we continued our journey, determined to complete the work entrusted to us by God, restoring not only the physical walls of Jerusalem but also the hope and identity of our people. After weeks of intense efforts in rebuilding Jerusalem's walls, I began to realize that the mission we had undertaken went beyond the physical restoration of the city. I closely observed the daily lives of our people and detected signs of silent suffering that threatened the cohesion and harmony of our community. Many Jews were facing internal injustices, indebted, exploited by their own brothers and sisters, and trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair. It was a moment of deep reflection for me. Rebuilding the walls not only protected our city from external enemies, but also represented an opportunity to rebuild our spiritual and moral lives. I felt that to truly restore Jerusalem, we also needed to restore justice and equity within our own community. One afternoon, as I walked through the city streets, I heard murmurs of discontent and sadness. Men, women, and children shared their concerns about overwhelming debts and the oppression they faced due to loans they could not repay. The pain in people's eyes reflected a despair that could not be ignored. I decided it was time to act, to bring not only physical reconstruction but also the spiritual and moral restoration of our people. I met with the community leaders, including the elders and high-ranking officials responsible for guiding and protecting our people. We felt a mix of hope and apprehension in the air, knowing that what we were about to do could transform many lives but also challenge those accustomed to maintaining the status quo. Friends and brothers, I began, looking into each person's eyes, we have done an extraordinary job rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, but we cannot ignore the injustices happening among us. Many of our brothers are being oppressed, indebted, and forced to serve one another under conditions that do not reflect the principles of justice and compassion we profess. There was a tense silence in the room as everyone absorbed my words. Some leaders bowed their heads in shame, while others looked at me with expressions of concern and remorse. It was clear that the problem was deeper and more ingrained than we had initially imagined. We must remember the promises God made to us, I continued, with a firm and convincing voice. He freed us from captivity in Babylon and brought us back to our land with the intention of living in freedom and prosperity. We cannot allow our own brothers and sisters to be enslaved and exploited. We need to restore justice and equity within our community. I felt a subtle change in the atmosphere. Shame and guilt began to emerge on the faces of the leaders present. I realized that to achieve true restoration, it was necessary to confront directly those who were perpetuating these injustices. If any of you are charging exorbitant interest or forcing your brothers to work as slaves to pay off debts, I ask you to consider the devastating impact this is having on our families and our collective faith, I declared, my voice resonating with determination. We cannot continue like this. We must treat one another with justice and compassion, according to our God's teachings. There were murmurs of agreement, and some leaders began to recognize the severity of their actions. Many bowed their heads in repentance, while others tried to justify their practices. But I knew that true change required more than just words. It demanded concrete action and a renewed commitment to the principles of justice and equality. Let us do the following, I proposed, looking each leader in the eye with seriousness. We will restore properties and release those who have been forced to work against their will. We will eliminate abusive interest rates and ensure that everyone can live in peace and dignity. This is the only way to truly restore our community and honor God. Some leaders stood up and agreed, promising to make the necessary changes to correct the injustices. There was a sense of relief and hope in the air, a renewal of the commitment to justice and equity that we all needed. As the promises were made and actions began, I felt a silent victory, knowing that we were on the right path to restoring not only our city but also our faith and humanity. Implementing these changes was not easy. There was resistance from some who feared losing power and wealth, but the unity and determination of the people of Jerusalem prevailed. We established a supervision system to ensure that the promises were kept and that justice was maintained throughout the community. People began to feel immediate relief, their lives improving as oppression decreased and equity was restored. During this period of transformation, we organized community meetings where people could express their concerns and suggest improvements. It was a space for open and honest dialogue, where every voice was heard and respected. Trust began to be rebuilt, and the sense of belonging and solidarity grew among us. Over time, the scars of internal injustices began to heal. Families that once lived in fear and insecurity could now breathe a sigh of relief, knowing they had the support and protection of their community. Faith in God was revitalized, and the justice we established became a living testimony of our spiritual and moral renewal. My leadership during this period showed that the true rebuilding of Jerusalem was not limited to the physical elevation of the walls, but involved a profound spiritual and moral renewal. I learned that the true strength of a community lies in its ability to care for one another, ensure that everyone is treated with dignity and respect, and maintain faith and justice as fundamental pillars of our existence. Restoring faith and justice among the people was an essential step in our rebuilding journey. It demonstrated that with determination, inspiring leadership, and unwavering faith, we could overcome not only external challenges but also internal flaws that threatened our cohesion and prosperity. Jerusalem was not only being protected by strong walls but also strengthened by a united and just community, guided by the divine principles that sustained us. And so, as the walls of Jerusalem grew taller and sturdier, so did our faith and justice. The city that once lay in ruins was transforming into a true reflection of God's will, a place where physical security went hand in hand with spiritual and moral security. I, Nehemiah, was honored to lead this transformation, fully trusting in God's guidance and provision to restore our land and our people. After 52 days of tireless work, unwavering perseverance, and much prayer, we finally saw the fruits of our efforts. The walls of Jerusalem, which had been in ruins and a symbol of despair, were now completely rebuilt, raised with solid and renewed stones. The sense of achievement was palpable in the air, and joy radiated from the faces of everyone who participated in this great work. In the final days of reconstruction, there was a sense of urgency and determination. Every stone placed represented not only a physical barrier against enemies, but also a declaration of our faith and unity as God's chosen people. Mornings were filled with the sound of tools working, and nights with prayers and reflections on the journey we had walked together. On the day of completion, I woke up before dawn, feeling a mix of exhaustion and excitement. I knew that day would be special, a milestone in the history of Jerusalem and the people of Israel. I gathered all the leaders and organized the preparations for the grand celebration to come. The streets of Jerusalem, now protected by the new walls, shone under the sunlight, reflecting renewed hope in every stone. When the first light of day illuminated the completed walls, I called the people to gather in the heart of the city. Men, women, young and old came together, bringing food, music, and joy for the occasion. The sound of trumpets and songs echoed through the streets, creating an atmosphere of gratitude and praise. I climbed to the top of the walls, where the panoramic view of Jerusalem now revealed a vibrant and secure city. I looked down at the gathered crowd and felt a deep connection with each individual present. Beloved brothers and sisters, I began, my voice resonating with emotion. Today we celebrate not only the rebuilding of our city's walls but also the rebirth of our faith and identity as God's people. The words flowed with sincerity, reflecting the journey we had faced together. During these 52 days, we faced immense challenges, from enemy opposition to internal difficulties. But through our faith and unity, we overcame every obstacle. Every stone we placed was blessed by God, and every drop of sweat shed was a testament to our determination. The crowd responded with applause and cheers of joy, feeling the truth of my words in their hearts. I continued, today, we celebrate God's faithfulness, who guided and strengthened us every step of this journey. This wall is not just a physical protection, it is a symbol of our resilience, our unwavering faith, and our commitment to one another. We invited everyone to join in prayer, thanking God for His provision and protection. Hands were raised in praise, and prayers filled the air, uniting us even more in gratitude and worship. Lord, we thank you for guiding and sustaining us during this mission. May these walls serve as a constant reminder of your protection and our commitment to live according to your will. After the prayer, we began the celebration with a large communal meal. Tables were set up along the streets, filled with lovingly and generously prepared food. Music and dancing filled the environment, reflecting the joy of a people who had found renewal and hope. Children played in the streets while adults shared stories of courage and faith. During the celebration, memories of the difficult moments were shared, but always with a focus on overcoming and gratitude. Do you remember the nights we gathered in prayer, asking for strength and direction? I asked a group of young people. They nodded, sharing how those prayers had been a pillar of support during moments of doubt and fear. At the end of the day, I looked again at the newly built walls, now illuminated by the twilight. I felt a deep satisfaction seeing the protected city and the united people celebrating. This moment represented much more than the completion of a physical work. It was the restoration of our identity as a nation and the confirmation of God's protection and favor upon us. The walls of Jerusalem were back, stronger and more imposing than ever, symbolizing the renewed security and confidence of the people of Israel. Every stone told the story of our faith, our struggle, and our collective victory. The city that had been in ruins now stood as a living testament to God's faithfulness and the resilience of His people. As night fell, the celebration continued with lights shining through the streets and laughter echoing throughout the city. I felt honored and blessed to have led this transformation, fully trusting in God's guidance and provision. May this city remain forever secure and may our faith continue to guide us, I declared with a smile, watching the community united in joy and gratitude. And so, the completion of the work and the celebration of the wall's dedication marked the rebirth of Jerusalem. It was a moment of triumph, spiritual renewal, and reaffirmation of our identity as God's people. The physical protection of the walls reflected the spiritual protection we had restored, and the celebration symbolized the joy and gratitude for having overcome all adversities with divine help. I, Nehemiah, witnessed this rebirth with a heart full of gratitude and faith, knowing that our city was protected not only by stones but by the strength and unity of a people who believed in God's promise. Jerusalem was secure, its identity restored, and our commitment to God stronger than ever. Reflecting on the journey I undertook to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, I clearly see how each stage was essential for the restoration not only of the physical structures but also of the spiritual and moral fabric of our people. The completion of this monumental work symbolizes much more than the restoration of the barriers that protected the city. It represents the renewal of our identity, the revival of our faith, and the reaffirmation of justice and unity among us. Through my leadership, we learned that facing challenges with courage and determination is fundamental to achieving great accomplishments. We faced opposition and resistance, but our unwavering faith and readiness to defend what was ours allowed us to overcome these obstacles. The unity of the people, driven by a shared vision and divine support, was the foundation upon which the walls of Jerusalem were raised. This process taught us that when we work together with a common purpose, we can turn seemingly impossible situations into significant victories. Additionally, the restoration of internal justice demonstrated that true rebuilding goes beyond physical structures. It is necessary to cultivate an environment of equity, respect, and compassion within the community. By confronting injustices and promoting equality, we strengthened the bonds that unite us and ensured that everyone could thrive in harmony. This aspect of our journey reinforces the importance of leading with integrity and protecting the most vulnerable, ensuring that our faith translates into concrete actions of kindness and justice. The celebration of the wall's completion was a moment of deep gratitude and recognition of God's faithfulness. It was a living proof that with faith and collective effort, we can achieve great feats. This event marked the rebirth of the security and identity of the people of Israel, showing that divine protection is always present when we unite in purpose and action. May Nehemiah's story inspire us to face our own challenges with the same courage and determination. Let us learn the importance of inspiring leadership, community unity, and unwavering faith in times of adversity. Just as we rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, we can rebuild our lives and communities, overcoming difficulties and celebrating victories with gratitude and hope. Always remember that, regardless of the barriers we face, faith and unity have the power to transform desolation into renewal and sorrow into joy. May we follow Nehemiah's example, fully trusting in God's guidance and provision, and working together to build a future of security, justice, and prosperity for all. May God's protection and favor be upon each of us, guiding us in every step of our journeys and strengthening us to achieve the accomplishments He has reserved for us. Nehemiah's story teaches us that with faith, leadership, and unity, we can overcome any obstacle and achieve great deeds. Regardless of the difficulties we face, we can find strength in our faith and community to turn challenges into opportunities for growth and renewal. May each of us be inspired by Nehemiah's determination to build a better world, where justice, peace, and prosperity are a reality for all.